It's my belief that we're going to have a big false flag prior to the financial collapse.
Hey friends, welcome back. Thanks so much for joining us. We have the one and only Bill Holter from JS Mineset on the line with us. And, Bill, before we get started, well, first, welcome. How are you?
Good. How are you, Sean?
Hey, I'm hanging in there. I just want to dive right in because there's so much going on geopolitically, and you and I haven't spoken here in a while, so you can take us through the latest in terms of geopolitical economics. But let me just recap for you as I see it. As the dollar as world reserve currency, as that paradigm collapses, we're beginning to see also the collapse of the war on terror paradigm. Putin has exposed the ISIS-Turkey-NATO oil trade, and now Iraq is even seeking to cancel its security agreement with the United States and will invite Russia to fight ISIS. I'll tell you what, Bill, this whole crazy illusion of the war on terror is falling apart about as quickly as the dollar as world's reserve currency paradigm. And then, get this, the latest news just coming out last week here from the IMF is that the globalist bankster IMF announced that it has forgiven Ukraine's debt to Russia. That came from Zero Hedge. Can you even believe it? How generous of the IMF to forgive Ukraine's debt to Russia. This is global monetary warfare, isn't it?
Well, it shows you that there's only a rule of law if it pertains to dollars or dollar-based assets and debt. I mean, the way I look at it is this is a race. It's a race between the natural collapse of the Western economic / financial system or the beginning of a war.
It seems to me that what we're seeing is the desperation of the IMF and the Pentagon powers. They're pushing too hard, and now Putin has shown the whole world on the global stage that it's all an illusion. The war on terror, the war on ISIS is an absolute illusion. So we really need to give credit where credit's due to Putin, don't we?
Well, he's been certainly the cooler head. I mean, he's been poked and poked and poked and not responded. And I don't think that he's not responded out of weakness.
No, I think he's not responded out of out of moral correctness. I mean, I think he's got the moral high ground here. I mean, anybody who can think, anybody that can put two and two together with brain cells, has to come to the conclusion that Putin is on the side of good, because it's the Pentagon in the false war on terror, and we need to, take the war to ISIS before the ISIS terror comes here, but then we don't bomb ISIS, and the Pentagon drops leaflets notifying the ISIS, bad guys that they should abandon their oil trucks because U.S. airstrikes are coming. I'm not making this stuff up, Bill. That's actually what's going on, and the whole world knows it.
Well, who would ever have believed this? I mean, I'm a child of the 60s, and who would ever have believed these events when we were children back then? It's like a complete flip-flop between right and wrong, good and evil, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it sure is. Well, let me just circle back to that IMF note about forgiving Ukraine's debt to Russia. Let me read this to you. I want your reaction. The IMF has now been drawn into the U.S. Cold War orbit. On Tuesday, it made a radical decision to dismantle the condition that had integrated the global financial system for the past half century. By doing so, it announced its new policy, quote, "We only enforce debts owed in U.S. dollars to U.S. allies," end quote. Makes me wonder about that debt in drachmas that the people of Greece owe. I mean, what the hell's going on here, Bill?
Well, what about other currencies? What about debt in yuan? And China is beginning to issue debt around the world in yuan. I mean, it's basically the IMF saying that there is no rule of law unless you do it in dollars. It's desperation. Hey, Sean, something else came up today, and I just briefly ran through the article that the free port in Zurich, as of January 1st, is going to reveal the names of everyone who holds assets or boxes in the free port. So talk about the rule of law. For what, 100 years or more, Switzerland has been a safe haven. It's been a privacy haven. And as of January 1st, it looks like that is completely done too. So it's the rule of law is gone.
You know, I think Canada has also recently announced that negative interest rates are on the way. I mean, the rule of financial law is certainly gone. And, you know, we know that the Pentagon and the powers that be, the Lindsey Grahams of the world, the John McCains of the world, the Hillary Clintons of the world certainly don't respect the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So I guess constitutional or human law is also being disregarded. I think it's crunch time. So why don't you tell us about crunch time, Bill? You wrote an interesting article last week called Crunch Time, and I think we need to discuss it.
Um, Basically, if you look at the world financially, economically, geopolitically, it's everything's coming to a head at this point. And as I mentioned before, it's like a race to either a financial collapse or a war. And the side of the financial collapse is just look at what's going on. The global economy is shrinking, trade is shrinking, even internally in the U.S. Just look at what's going on in the trucking industry. That tells you the true health of the U.S. economy. The trucking industry is collapsing. Um, so you've got this race between the natural collapse of the West versus the West trying to provoke a war. I finished the article, speaking of crunch time, talking about what happened, I believe it was Tuesday last week, on the COMEX. COMEX had an increase in open interest for this of 881 contracts. So that's 88,100 ounces, which left the COMEX at I think it was 370,000 ounces standing for delivery versus 130,000 ounces of gold available for delivery. So you're looking at 225,000 ounces over and above the COMEX is sitting on. So from the standpoint of do they deliver, do they not deliver, that was the gist of the article of crunch time. Now the next day on Wednesday, uh, miraculously 120 some odd thousand ounces that were standing for delivery vanished. Now let me explain how ridiculous this is, because as of first day notice, any account that has open contracts for that spot month that's expiring, they've got to be 100% fully funded. They have to be 100% fully funded in order to pay for the delivery. So who in their right mind is going to fully fund their account for delivery and then all of a sudden go away? For what possible reason? I'm going to give you the answer to that. The possible reason is they're being paid a premium. I have no idea what the premium is, but they're being paid a premium to go away. And that's how these contracts are being cash settled and evaporating. And it's happened uh, delivery month after delivery month. But still, even with this 120,000 ounces that went away, there's still more than 2 ounces standing for delivery for every 1 ounce that COMEX claims to have. And by the way, I believe in the last 2 months or 2.5 months, COMEX registered inventory has not taken in, but I believe uh, 2 deliveries for just over a whopping 1 ton of gold.
Well, it's not surprising. I mean, we've been talking a long time, Bill, about the fact that the COMEX would just settle in fiat, right? They're not going to have a default. There will be no force majeure as long as they can settle in fiat. And you know, your thesis here is that that's what they have been doing, and that's what they're going to continue to do. The question is, how long can they get away with it?
The one thing I think people need to take away from this is here's just the December delivery month where all of a sudden 88,000 ounces show up to demand delivery. That took up or takes up roughly 2/3 of the total inventory that's available for delivery. One of these days, somebody's going to step up and they're going to demand delivery for everything that's in the inventory. They're not going to be bought off. They're not going to go away. You're going to see a default, you're going to see a force majeure, and that's going to be a defining moment. That will be the moment when the system goes boom, and gold will go no offer. And at what price is gold? Who knows? The price of gold is where you can buy an ounce and actually get it in your hand. And is it $100 higher? Is it $500 higher? Is it double? Who knows? But it's a much higher number than where it is right now.
Well, and you hit on a key word, which is dollars. I mean, in dollars, that's
Right,
really the
exactly.
key. Who the heck knows where it's going if we hit hyperinflation? And that's the road we're on, Bill. Now, I've actually said in a couple interviews here, if you want to see hyperinflation, let's look at the national debt. Remember when we hit the debt ceiling? Then they raised the debt ceiling to 19.5 trillion, and then in November the debt spiked by over 600 billion dollars. That's hyperinflation.
Exactly. And divide the $600 billion divided by the 8,000 tons, and I mean you're looking at a pretty big number just there.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this too, because we haven't spoken since that Black Friday slam down in the metals, in which at that point we saw 18,000 contracts hit the market. I think it was $18.1 billion in notional, if memory serves, but I think it was 18,000 contracts. Bill, where did that come from? Where did that magic gold come from?
Well, that's I mean you're talking about well over a week's worth of global production, and it was sold primarily within 4 minutes. Within a 30-minute time span, there were 4 minutes, and if I recall, it was something like 14,000 of the 18,000 contracts were sold within 4 individual minutes. Nobody sells like that. It makes zero sense. They're selling at the most illiquid time. It was clearly done to affect price. It was not done to liquidate gold. And it was not physical gold. It was paper.
Just it's the same old story. And I think if you look back at these other Black Fridays, I think I saw a chart in which this has happened Black Friday after Black Friday after Black Friday. It happens all the time. It's what they do. They're criminals. They manipulate systems. They manipulate markets. That's why smart guys like you say there are no more markets.
There
Every
are no
market is fixed, right? Every market's fixed. LIBOR is fixed. Tell us which markets are fixed. We know LIBOR is fixed. What else is fixed? Everything's fixed.
Hey, Sean, speaking of broken markets, if you look at, and this is really important, if you look at the credit markets right now, junk has basically collapsed. It's collapsed, but there's no trading, there's no liquidity. If you talk to any bond traders, they'll tell you they are scared witless that somebody's going to come in and make some type of big dollar sale. There's no liquidity. There's also the liquidity is beginning to dry up in the U.S. Treasury market. The credit markets are drying up. Equate this to real estate markets. People, listeners, readers, watchers have seen the real estate market back in 2006, 2007. All of a sudden, like that, the volume dried up. All of a sudden, houses stopped selling. Real estate stopped selling. Prices didn't go down because uh, people didn't lower their offering prices, but the bids went away. There was no volume. And that's what's happening in the credit markets in general. Once there's some big sales into the credit markets are going to break price-wise. And that break price-wise means these big institutions are going to have to start remarking their portfolios down. So if they're carrying bonds at 90, 95, 100 cents on the dollar, and all of a sudden there's some trades done at 30 or 40 cents, they just lost half the value of that bond and half the value of that sector of the portfolio. Uh, so please understand that the lack of liquidity, the lack of volume in the credit markets is going to lead to the same thing that happens in all markets when volume goes away. They're going to contract. And that's also what you're seeing in the economy. There's very little velocity. that velocity, the decline in velocity has been made up for by the pumping of money supplies. But the money supplies now, they don't have the growth rate that they had. So the velocity, the lesser and less velocity is taking over. And that's why there's no money in the streets. That's why it feels bad, because it is bad.
Yeah, it is bad, and it reminds me of what my friend John Titus from the Best Evidence YouTube channel said in a recent interview that I did with him. And you know this well, Bill. Let me see if I recap this correctly. So folks understand, when liquidity dries up and Wall Street gets desperate, rewind to 2008 when Merrill Lynch desperately tried to sell its mortgage-backed securities into the market and could only get 5 cents on the dollar for them, Bill.
Exactly.
That's
Yep.
Armageddon. And that's why then you get the banksters at the top of the pyramid, the globalists at Goldman Sachs and whatnot, coming in and telling Congress, you give us $700 billion or we're taking this whole thing down.
Yeah, and it wasn't just $700 billion. When the truth came out, the Fed was out and they lent $16 trillion.
Yeah, we know that thanks to Ron Paul's limited audit of the Fed. That's right. Well, you know what? All right, so what we've established in this call is what we already know, and that's that economic rule of law has been absolutely destroyed. It's been forgotten. It's been trampled. It's been thrown to the wayside by the Wall Street bankers. Let me ask you this before I let you go, and I don't want to put you on the spot. But I just want to take you through this. You ever watch those CSI-type crime shows, the detective shows at all?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not a fan of those either, but I've watched a couple of them, and it seems to me that when a crime occurs and the police or the detectives or the FBI show up and they interview witnesses, some of the things that the witness accounts say could be considered leads or clues. Would you agree with that?
Sure.
Okay, I just want to ask your thoughts on, are you familiar with Operation Gladio and the terror-style attacks that took place in Italy and the CIA was involved for some 20, 30 years?
Yep.
All right. Here's my question for you, Bill. In San Bernardino, when we had this mass shooting not too long ago, which has been pinned on two Islamic people, a husband and a rather petite wife, on the day of that shooting, there were two, maybe more, but I can account and play them for you right here, right now, two eyewitness accounts saying that there were 3 white men with athletic builds on that day. Would you like to hear those sound bites? Because I'd love your reaction.
Sure, I'd like to hear them, but I remember watching the news that day, and it was clear that they were talking about 3 shooters.
3 shooters.
I heard that with my own ears that day, so.
As did I. And it just seems to me that if we lived in a nation with rule of law and with actual journalists instead of sidecar journalists like me doing it part-time, it seems to me that these would be leads that the media would want to follow up on. Let me play this. This is an interview CBS did with this particular eyewitness. Her first name's Sally. Here it comes.
Ms. Abdel-Magee, can you describe to me in as much detail as you can, what did the gunman look like?
I couldn't see his face. He had a black hat on, and from my view, all I could see was just a black hat and black long-sleeve shirt, possibly gloves on. He had black cargo pants on, the kinds with the zippers on the sides and the big puffy pockets. He had a huge assault rifle, and he had extra ammo. He's coming ready for something, to reload. I don't know. He had like magazines. I couldn't see what else. I just saw 3 dressed exactly the same.
You're certain that you saw 3 men?
Yes. It looks like their skin color was white. They looked like they were athletic build, and they appear to be tall.
Now, before I let you respond to that, Bill, please let me play, because this is a problem. This is a problem for the official story. So that was Sally Abdel-Magee, whose eyewitness account attests to the fact that there were 3 men with athletic builds dressed head to toe in military-style black gear. And she has no reason to lie, as far as I can tell. Here's the other problem for the official story. Juan Hernandez's testimony coming at you right now.
Where I was at right here, we seen there was 3 white men in military fatigues taking off.
What were they driving?
It was a black Impala, like SUV, or yeah.
You think that they might have been the shooters?
Yeah. The way they were driving, yeah.
And
Yeah.
how many shots did you hear?
Oh, a lot. It was a lot. It sounded like, yeah, like I said, it sounded like a gun range, just shots going off like crazy. It was a lot of shots.
What's your first name?
Juan
Juan, what's your last?
Hernandez.
All right, I just want to play that for you, Bill, because I think it's an absolute outrage that we see these events happen time and time and time again. And incidentally, there were drills, active shooter drills happening in that same area on the same day that this event went live, that the drills, quote unquote, went live. And we have eyewitnesses telling reporters, mainstream media journalists, that they saw 3 men, not 1 man and a woman, 3 men. And to me, it reminds me of Operation Gladio style terror, Bill. And I just want your reaction because I respect your opinion so much.
Well, you can't mistake a 5-foot-tall woman for an athletic man. That's the first thing. And all I could say is I guess the third shooter vanished, just like contracts on the Comex vanished that are standing for delivery. I mean, it's all a mirage. It's all a lie. Like I said, the rule of law is gone. And where this is headed is going to be absolutely multiples of where we were going to go in 2008. Because in 2008, we still had a semblance of the rule of law. Now there's no more rule of law. So where this goes will be multiples worse than what 2008 would have been.
I couldn't agree more, and that's why I wanted to play that for you. I didn't necessarily want to get into state-sponsored or government-sponsored terror, false flag terrorism, but again, it looks like these events are that. And it makes me worry because you're right, rule of law is gone. And once
Hey, Sean,
yeah,
before we end, I've written in the last week or two or three times, it's my belief that we're going to have a big false flag prior to the financial collapse. Now, is there a date attached to that? I don't know. Maybe the date is the day that the Fed is supposed to raise interest rates, or they say they're going to raise interest rates. I don't know. Would a false flag be a reason for them to not raise interest rates? Yeah, it would be. But they've got to have something to point at. They've got to have something to blame that shows they're not at fault. So I'm of the belief that we are headed toward a very big false flag.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And what worries me about this stuff, Bill, is that these shootings, these events, these false flag events give the powers that be multiple vector points from which they can benefit. And now that we're on the subject of false flag, and that's why I love you, Bill, because you're not afraid to talk about this stuff, because others are. There are other pundits in the economic sector that I cannot talk about these subjects with, and it's too bad because this is the stuff.
It is.
It is what it is, but this is the stuff we have to talk about if we want to try to save this country and the Constitution. And what do they get out of the San Bernardino shooting? They get the opportunity for a gun grab, and they get the opportunity to demonize ISIS, and then they get a Zionist warmonger like Lindsey Graham, who has free access to CNN, go on and say that the wife of the husband and wife team that shot up all these people in San Bernardino, he says the wife pledged her allegiance to al-Baghdadi. So now we need to put boots on the ground in Syria. Well, as I like to point out, who met with al-Baghdadi? Whose picture do we have with al-Baghdadi? John McCain.
John McCain.
Yeah, so again, we gotta put on the brakes, and we have to re-level set reality for our listeners and our viewers, and pray to God that they share this information with their friends and family, because they will not get the truth from CNN or Fox News about this stuff. Now, CNN will invite those guys on, and you'll hear al-Baghdadi, al-Baghdadi, al-Baghdadi. He's the new Bin Laden, right? We'll hear that all day long, but they'll never show you the pictures of John McCain having met with al-Baghdadi as we support Syrian rebels to topple Assad. You won't get that big picture, Bill. So what do they get out of these false flags? They get to dismantle the Constitution, Bill of Rights, police state, gun grab, more endless war in the Middle East.
Never let a good crisis go to waste.
Yeah, that's their playbook.
Or a created crisis go to waste.
That's right. Order ab chaos.
We all, as a matter of the world order, such as it is, need to come together urgently in order to assert rule of law, human decency, and to make order out of places where there is chaos.
Order out of chaos. That's their playbook. And it's more and more people are catching on to it, though, Bill. And Putin, we got to give him credit. Putin is exposing a lot of this garbage for the world to see.
Well, he certainly did that with the oil.
Yeah.
The funding, the way ISIS is funding itself. I mean, they're doing that via Turkey, a NATO country. I
Yep.
mean, it's
Yep, endless convoys of oil trucks going unabated into Turkey, benefiting Erdogan and his family, and of course, funding ISIS. You know, we mentioned the New World Order a lot on this show, Bill, and it's because George Bush Sr., the former head of the CIA, the director of the CIA, he said it as president some 223, 224 times in speeches publicly. We see a New World Order coming into view. Guess what? A lot of people who correct me and say, well, it's the old world order. It's the banking families. And as my friend Mike Rivero says, all wars are bankster wars, and boy, is he right.
well, that's true. And just remember this: the elite always warn ahead of time. That's good good etiquette, according to the elite, and that's what George Bush was doing beginning back in 1991.
Yeah, it's social survival of the fittest. They believe if they tell us what they're going to do before they do it, then they're off the hook, and that's on us. It's
And
sick.
it's our fault.
Yeah, it's our fault, but they're sick. And you know what? I want to say one last thing about this. It sounds trite to say they're sick, but they truly are sick because it's much, much easier to spread evil than it is to spread good. It's much, much easier to rob a person than help a person, feed a person, teach him how to feed himself. It's much easier to do bad under the cloak of darkness like these intelligence agencies do, to go in and shoot a place up and blame it on your enemy. That's such an age-old playbook. This false flag terror playbook is worn out, Bill. It's absolutely worn out. I mean, literally the pages are falling out, and guys like us are picking it up going, do you see this, American public? This is absolutely obvious. Wake up.
I know.
Yeah. All right, brother. Well, obviously I've got a fire in my belly, but it's because I am sick and tired of seeing the American people and people around the world whipsawed into frenzies over this stuff, because as long as they can keep us infighting and as long as they can keep us afraid, then we will willingly give up our liberties and we will give up our future to the people who want to enslave us. And Bill, I can't thank you enough for your time. You're one of the truth tellers I most admire. Can you tell people about your work over there at JS Mineset?
Yeah, my writings can be found at www.jsmineset.com. And we just got done with doing, Jim Sinclair and I just got done doing a conference last month in LA. I believe we're going to announce a conference sometime in January. That'll be our next one. I think it's going to be in Florida. I'm not positive, but check the website and that'll be up shortly.
All right, we'll do that. And as you guys know, we post all of Bill Holter's material at SGTreport.com. So, Bill, thank you so much for taking the time with us today. I hope you have a wonderful week ahead. And guys, thank you for your support at SGTreport.com, thephaser.com, and thelibertymill.com. Real news 24/7. That's our pledge to you. God bless.